Hey there. In this video I want to look at the differences between men and women, and I want to frame from the beginning. When talking about masculine and feminine, we're talking energies, and masculine's not necessarily men and feminine's not necessarily women. So approximately 80% of women are dominant feminine energy, and approximately 80 to 85% of men are dominantly masculine energy. Now, saying that, men are not gay if they have more feminine energy apparent than that, and similarly with a woman. If a woman has more masculine energy that's dominant, doesn't mean they're gay either. So I just wanted to frame that masculine and feminine is energies, and it's not necessarily boys or girls. For the ladies watching, who's felt that they've had to make a majority of the decisions? When doing this, you're in your masculine energy during those moments, and I don't know how many times in my coaching days that I've heard women say, I just wish he'd make a effing decision. And, you know, I wish he'd do something, take charge of the situation. And often at times it can be hard for men to give a lot of F's. Men are traditionally very single-minded, and when asked to consider options or different dynamics or decisions, they can feel like it's just all too hard. And traditionally women are good at considering a lot of people, and men not so much. It's important and very powerful to understand these different styles that women and men live by. There's a great book called The Queen's Code, and the idea in the book for women is that women think men are just stupid women. And, you know, they'll think, why doesn't he get it? All my girlfriends get it. Why doesn't he get it? You know, he's being a stupid woman. And as I mentioned, there's a tremendous power in understanding that there's a certain style that women have to getting things done, and there's a totally different style that men have as well. You'll often see this in young boys and girls, how they engage with the world around them differently, totally differently to each other. Something we're losing in our society is the respect for the uniqueness and differences that men and women have, and masculine energies, and how different they are. If we were totally the same, life would be very boring, and we need to respect that vast difference that masculine and feminine energy have. If we were both the same energies in a relationship, what you would effectively have is just a friend. If you think about the example of a battery, if you get two positive energies, the battery repels, and similar with two negative energies, it repels. When you get a positive and a negative, you get that right connection. Looking at this dynamic between masculine and feminine energy can bring up some strong emotions with a lot of people, and this can be a fantastic thing. It's good to write down some of the stuff that can come up and look into it further. One of the reasons relationships can be tricky, and if not the hardest thing that we deal with in our lives, is trying to effectively connect with someone that's a stranger. And we're saying, hey, I like you, you like me, let's live together and try and work out this whole dynamic while we, figure out ourselves. The world's in flux, we're changing, our partners are changing, and we're trying to figure each other out. And it's not just this other person that we're trying to figure out as well. It's actually their parents and their parents' parents, their beliefs, their emotions, their values, their behaviours. It's all something that we get from our parents and our parents' parents, and similar with your partner. And we are actually putting that on to our kids, even if we haven't had them yet. One of the huge differences that come up between men and women is the aspect of multitasking. And none of us can actually multitask. Multitasking is a bit of a myth. We we can switch from tasks. And the reason that women are far better at switching tasks than men is their pathway between their right hemisphere and left hemisphere in their brain, the neural pathways, are 3 times thicker. So it's quite interesting. Women are far better at multitasking, and it's similar in conversations as well. You know, often men can find it hard to know where women are coming from, and it can be from them flipping from one thing to another, whereas men are quite, as I say, single-minded. And this goes back to primal times as well, where men's primary directive was to go out and hunt food, and the women had to think about a multitude of things, you know, collecting berries, collecting plants, and cooking and tending to the kids, etc. Now let's look at, in more recent times in human evolution, how men have effed up the dynamic between women and men. The story ends well, but let's look at the dynamic. Prior to the 1960s, it was socially unacceptable to divorce, so many people generally just didn't do it. They'd stay together. The stats today are quite staggering though. There's a 50-50 chance that you'll end up in divorce. And those rates are coming back, which you think would be a good thing. However, this relates to young people not actually getting married. And if you look at the statistics of people breaking up outside of marriage, we're looking at 67% of couples generally splitting. We go right back through human evolution. Men and women have generally had an unspoken law to stick together as men and women, and they recognised that men had weaknesses as women did have weaknesses as well, and that coming together they'd rely on each other for those weaknesses. The women had strengths that men didn't, and similarly women had, men had strengths that the women didn't have. If we simplify that down, a man's power was his economic power. Generally the man would work and make the money, and women would not do so. And if we boil that down, a man's power is generally stronger later on in life. They're economically stronger in their 40s and 50s as opposed to their 20s. With the women, however, it's the total opposite. In their 20s, their power is, very fertile. They're made to be giving birth and beautiful, and that reduces over time, obviously. So a couple come together in their 20s, and she says, I'll give you life, I'll give you kids, and I'll stick by your side, and over time you'll give us the economic security and a life where we're no longer struggling. Now, there's always been infidelity, even if we go right back to Roman times, but even with infidelity, back in the olden days, men and women would keep that bond of marriage together, even through infidelity. However, over time, men started thinking, well, I've got this economic power that's got stronger as I've gotten older, and I might just go and start over. I might go look for a new beauty, and my options are more open now. I'm economically a lot stronger. I might go and start over and have a new family, and they go down that path. So women effectively got burnt, with the men going away and starting with a fresh start with another family. And when you get a divide in this way, there's a real pendulum swing, and the mothers would come away from it and say to their daughters, don't be like me. You need to be strong, you need to look after yourself, not rely on men. And a lot of those masculine traits would come out in the women, the girls growing up, because the wives or the mothers are giving them that backing to be stronger. And similarly with the boys, they're telling them, don't be like your father. You need more traits that are along the feminine path. Be a lot more caring and thoughtful. And a point should be made now, we don't have a toxic masculinity problem in the world, we have a lack of masculinity problem in the world. Because the men aren't there to be role models. And then the sons and daughters grow up, and they go and meet partners from other broken families, and the women have been taught to be strong, have more masculine energies, and the men are told to have more of the feminine energies, the let me please you kind of energy. And I'll ask the women watching now how you feel when a man is being a pleaser. Women don't want a pleaser. They actually want some friction, some gumption in the relationship. Because when they have a pleaser, it's like having another girlfriend. So if that relationship ends, she comes away needing to be harder, more independent, stronger, and then he's letting the emotions come to the fore, and he's more soft and effeminate. I'll ask you now watching, do you know any older women that are separated and are harder, stronger women? And do you know any older men that are separated themselves and that they're more in touch with their emotions? And a side note here, there are some relationships where the male has more feminine energy and the female in the relationship has more masculine energy, and that's 100% fine. It's just knowing where we do naturally sit and what works for you. The next point I want to talk about is women generally want men to step up and make decisions and show more of their masculine energy. When bringing kids into the world, this is even more evident. It's fine when perhaps they're early on in the relationship, they haven't had kids yet, they're on this bit of a wild ride. But when children come into the equation, women can start to test the men, and often men don't realise they're being tested. And over time, this can cause a freezing up from the woman, where they stop starting to test people when they've almost given up on him stepping up. And it can be a really icy relationship. You watching now, do you know any older couples where it's almost like they're walking on ice? It's a walking on eggshells, I guess. Really kind of cold relationship, because there's not that toing and froing of energy that there used to perhaps be early on in the relationship. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I like to touch on it. I have a real general interest in the way people work and emotions and behaviours, and if you've got anything from it, I'd love to hear any comments below. And yeah, I appreciate you watching. Thanks a lot.